Hey everyone, Greg Maddox here. In this short video, I want to do a quick walkthrough to show you how we handle steps 1 and steps 2 of our 9-step freedom formula. Step 1 being discover your freedom point, step 2 being accelerate your results. You could do some of this stuff back of the napkin on scratch paper. We've developed some software. I'm going to walk you through it on the software, and hopefully you could take that and glean how to reverse engineer it for yourself, or you can always reach out to us and we'd be happy to run this for you. Let me pull up the software. I'm going to share with you a case study based on actual clients without sharing any details about them. And so when we think about the freedom point, if I ask a business owner, hey, how much do you think you need to sell your business for? People are like, I don't know, as much as possible, or $1 billion, right? It's just the wrong place to start. It's the wrong question. The real question to ask is, hey, what's the all-in lifestyle that you want to live with or without this business? While we're still growing it and building for the future, there's a certain number that you want to feel well compensated, have the choices to live the way you want to live, support your family, have enough, money in the bank for a rainy day, be able to contribute to the people and causes you care about, have money set up for life after, whatever that means to you. What's the all-in lifestyle that you want to live? It could be how you're currently paying yourself, salary, bonus, perks that you run through the business, profit distributions, whatever that is, that's the place to start. Because all of us, when we start businesses, we're doing it to create more freedom in our lives, and we're going to sacrifice a lot. It's worth it, but it's going to be a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the years that when I finally get to whatever's next for me, which might be building business number 2, or it could be that I'm done building operating companies, I definitely don't want to take a haircut and live on less. Yes, we could all live on less, but if we have a choice, why not build a machine that kicks out enough time and money that you could create the future that you actually want? So that's what I'm going to talk about. So I had a client, and when I asked her this question, she told me $500,000 a year was her number. She says, I'm currently living on that amount from the business, and I certainly don't want to take a haircut when I'm done. No problem. I then asked her, well, do you have any other passive income you currently, can rely upon? So that could be like rental income, or you could have passive ownership in other businesses that kick out some type of profit or dividends or some type of payment that you're not going to work for. And if that was the case, we would add that in here. And her example, she said, no, everything I got is coming from the business, which is par for most business owners. So that means that if she didn't have her business, we would have a $500,000 income gap to solve. So that's what you're working with your wealth management team to solve for the future. Again, this is not meant to be tax, legal, or wealth management advice, but back of the napkin, what we need to do is to reverse engineer how big a pile of money might you need to be able to support your life without your business, so that, and let's be honest, for most entrepreneurs, the business itself is going to do the heavy lifting, so we could get to what's a target sales price that would net enough to get you there. And so you've maybe heard of the 4% rule, which is a long-standing kind of conventional wisdom in the financial planning world that basically says, hey, no matter how big a pile of resources you have, if you never withdraw more than 4% of it, you'll never run out of money. Now, if you're working with a professional wealth advisor, they'll probably have different ways of helping you manage that, and they might be able to get way better results. So when we're working with our clients, we are definitely coordinating with their tax legal wealth team, and we're going to substitute those professionals' numbers in once they have them. But this is a great way to just get started. So we're going to use the 4% rule. So if I'd be able to fund my life without the business when I have this much saved. So that's $12.5 million. Someone can be like, well, I'm more aggressive. I would withdraw more from that. No problem. I need a smaller pile. I actually am more conservative. I want a bigger pile. So let's use a 3% withdrawal rate. It doesn't matter to us. The goal is just let's start someplace and create a plan. This particular client told me to use the 3% because she's really conservative. So she wanted to get to a nest egg of $16.5 million. So the first question was, okay, well, where are you at now? She had a couple $1 million saved. That's pretty good. For a lot of people, they might be done if they have $2 million saved and they could retire and do everything they want. Not for someone who's living off $500,000 a year. She's got bigger goals. So simple math we have a wealth gap of 14.5. I need 16.5. I currently have 2. I need 14.5. So you still need to save this much more or sell the business or leverage the business over time to fill that gap. So let's talk about what it takes to get there. She happened to be 100% owner. She had no long-term debt. But that's important to know that if you sell a business and you have debt, that's going to get paid off. Just like when you sell a house, your mortgage gets paid off, even if the new guy is getting a mortgage to buy it. The new owners of your business will get their own loans. They don't want yours. And then we're going to have to pay some fractional or frictional costs of the people who help you sell it. So you're going to have to get a broker or an M&A advisor to help you sell it. You're going to have to pay an M&A attorney to get the paperwork right. You're probably going to pay your CPA a little bit of money to help get the numbers right. So a good rule of thumb, larger companies will tend to, like, talk about transaction sizes in the $10-15 million plus range. The fee is typically closer to 5%. Smaller Main Street companies selling in the million, a couple million or so dollar range or less are going to be closer to 8 to 12%. So for this client, we used 5 for her. And then just a good rule of thumb is to put 2% for a budget for tax and legal. So that's 7 altogether. And then we got to pay Uncle Sam in the U.S., but every country, for the most part, has to pay taxes. So long-term capital gains in the U.S. right now federally are 20%. Who knows if that changes in the future? And then you got to pay whatever the state taxes are. So, again, not tax, legal, or investment advice. We would be working closely with their tax professionals to use whatever numbers they think are the correct ones, especially when you could do some planning to really reduce those tax percentages. So in her case, she told me to use 30% was the number between federal and state that she was going to have to pay. So this tells us that she has to grow a business to a $23 million valuation in order to sell it, pay these taxes and fees to walk away with $14.5 million, add that to the $2 million she's already got to land on the 16.5 that she needs to solve her wealth gap. Well, like many of you on this watching this video right now, you probably look at this $23 million number and choke on it. I know she did. Why is that? We're going to explain that in a minute. She had was doing some estate planning work and had a formal valuation done for tax and legal purposes. And we knew at the time that her business was only worth a few $1 million. And she was looking at the amount of revenue that she had created over the years that she's owned this thing, which was $9 million. And I'll explain the rest of it here in a second. And in her brain, she's like, I know this thing's currently only worth about, 2.5, 3 million. You're telling me I need to 7 to 8x that. So now in her brain, she's like 7 to 8xing her revenue and thinking, man, I got to build like an $80 million a year company. This is not what I signed up for. That's not me. I'm not going to build something that big. So I said, hold on, let's talk about business owner math. And so let me save the data and let's move on to the strategic plan builder. So tell me a little about the revenue. She had been doing $9 million. Tell me about the profit. It was $1 million. You can see that margin kind of tight. We're going to come back to that. Most private companies are traded or sold or are valued at some multiple of profit, or EBITDA, another fancy way of saying profit. And so for most of them, they range somewhere between 2 and 6. There are reasons to not be sellable at all, that you just own a job and nobody wants to pay you for that. And there's reasons to have it be way more than 6 times profit, depending on your industry, depending how big you build it, depending on how transferable it is, or if it's a strategic purchase for somebody. But most people fall between 2 and 6 times profit. Where you fall in that depends on how healthy your company is. So that means that she has a business somewhere between $2 million and $6 million, yet we need it to be worth 23. So in this case, she also had just survived cancer. And so and the business survived as well, which was amazing. And so now she had a self-imposed 5-year plan, not to sell, but to be ready. She knew she had to button up her tax, legal, and wealth stuff. She didn't know if she'd get, a second chance to do that. And she knew the business wasn't totally transferable because it was relying a lot on her from almost everything, even though she had staff, even though she's doing $9 million a year. And so she had a 5-year window. We knew that the business was, worth about 2.5 to 3, and we know that the current margins were 11.1. So to grow the business in 5 years, she would have to grow the revenue at 55, almost 56%. She'd have to grow from 9 million, 14, 21, 34, 53. There's that $80 million number that she already did in her head and said, this is not doable. So let's talk about what are the levers that we have as business owners to make this go faster and without killing ourselves. Well, one thing you could do is just kick the can down the road. I said, well, what is a growth rate? Obviously, 60% a year is probably not doable in a sustainable way for most people. And I said, well, what is a revenue growth rate that works for you? And she said, I'm pretty comfortable doing, low to mid 20%. We have a big ticket item. We're pretty good at selling it. We do channel partners. We get, sticky business. And so, we sell in big chunks. I feel pretty good about being able to do that. So, okay, let's kick the can down the road by increasing the years and pay attention to this growth rate. So how many years down the road before that growth rate gets into her low to mid 20s? It was like 10 or 11 years. Well, in her case, that didn't work. She didn't want to wait that long. So we said, well, what else can we do? We talked about the levers we have. Well, the profit margin. I said, have you ever benchmarked your profit against the competition or against the industry? Is this just normal? Is this best in class? What is that? She says, actually, no, this is an aberration. She did importing and exporting. And if you guys all remember kind of post-pandemic when shipping containers sat in bays on ships and didn't move. So that kind of shut down those businesses for a while. And once they did start to move, the people who did the transporting of those containers started gouging. And something that used to cost thousands of dollars started costing tens of thousands of dollars to do the same thing. And so her profits were temporarily depressed. And so what normally? She said, it's closer to about 18.5 or so. I said, do you think it's going to come back? Yes, it will come back. It's just going to take time. So okay, well, let's see what happens if we get back to a normal profit margin. Oh, look, growth rate's way down. We could subtract some years. We subtracted a few. We're 8, but we need to get to 5. So let's talk about business owner math again. The things that make your business healthier make it more attractive for others. So a good way to think about this, let's say you and I own the same business in the exact same industry. We have the same revenue and the same profit. I am the kind of chief cook and bottle washer. All the key relationships are through me. All of the secret sauce is in my head. I'm very micromanaging of all of my team. I have to be involved in every key decision. We don't have a lot of things documented. We don't have a lot of systems and processes. If I'm not there for an extended period of time, things either slow down or stop. You, on the other hand, in this hypothetical example, you have taken the time to document your systems and processes. You have people and teams who are empowered to do things without you. The key relationships aren't all through you. You've actually turned your job, your business, into an asset that can run with a lot less of you than in my scenario. So in those two examples, how much would you be willing to pay me for my business? Probably not much at all, right? Or maybe way down there at that 2 times, multiple or 1 times multiple, where you, if you've done all of that work, which incidentally, this is the kind of stuff that we do at Cultivate, that's the thing that makes the business more attractive. It's healthier. It's easier to transition to somebody else. They look at that as less risky. Like once I extract you from it, man, I could still take that thing and it would grow. That's a great asset. I'm willing to pay more for that. And so I said, well, what happens if we can actually just get the multiple from the low end up to average? Like 4.5. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with how businesses sell, if I have a business that's doing, $27 million a year in revenue and over $5 million of profit, and we've spent 5 years developing the team, processes, systems, documenting stuff, turning it into a less risky enterprise that doesn't require all of my client to run it. I could get M&A professionals lining up down the block to sell it for 4 times or 4.5 times profit. Chances are she could qualify and would attract a way higher offer. But for planning purposes, we don't need to go there. I would rather plan for a smaller multiple to get to our target freedom point value and be pleasantly surprised later that we're worth way more. Because what happens about that 50% problem, where 50% of the time people are forced to leave their business, not on their terms or timeline, death, disability, divorce, disagreement with partners, or disruption from the economy or technology or COVID or something like that. Well, if life throws them a curveball, and we've been doing all this work to make it healthier, maybe we do qualify for a 5 or maybe a 6 times multiple, but we haven't grown the revenue and the profit all the way up to these targets. Well, hopefully, if life does force their hand, because we were chasing bigger targets, now we have pleasantly surprised that maybe we're still land really close to where they need to be, even though they're getting forced to make a move ahead of their schedule. So from a planning perspective, we want to keep it really, really conservative. So in this example now, we can subtract those last couple years. And look, her 5-year window happened to line up just at the top edge of where she was comfortable, in which we kind of, stress test. Okay, are you sure you could grow from 9 million in revenue to 11 to 14 to 17 up to eventually 27? She's like, yeah, those numbers are doable in my head. What I don't really understand is how to move the multiple up. In theory, I do, working on the business, but that's where I really need help, is how do I get the systems and process and develop the teams and be able to delegate and level people up so it's not all just me. I'm not the chief and sole problem solver. And that's why we locked arms, and we're working to help her do that. The key here, though, guys, is the only reason that this $23 million freedom point value even matters to her is that it's tied to this, the all-in lifestyle number that she really wants. She knows that she's pulling $500,000 now. She lives the way she wants to live. If she could keep living off $500,000 a year after this business, she would be happy as a clam and not have to take any kind of haircut. So now all of the work that we're doing to help her move forward is not just, well, I did 9 million last year, let's do 10% or 20% more this year. No, we now have a roadmap of exactly what we need to hit year over year to not just get bigger, but to actually get to her freedom point value, which is what she started this business for in the first place, to have choices, control, to live her life the way that she wants to live it. So I hope that this is helpful for you to think differently about how you do your business planning. If you want us to walk you through this, inside the guide, there's places for you to reach out and set up time to talk to one of our people. We can do this calculation for you, no problem, no cost, no obligation. Looking forward to talking to you at some point in the future.